Hello, everyone. My name is Sakis Gekas, and I'm the HSF Chair in Modern Greek History at York University. It is a great pleasure to welcome today Leonidas Oikonomakis, who is a researcher, Marie Sklodowska Curie researcher in the University of Amsterdam, that I will prefer not to pronounce it. He's a very busy guy. First of all, welcome, Leonidas.
Thank you for the invitation.
Leonidas is also the probably don't like the term frontman, or the guy who writes the lyrics, the musician who writes the lyrics. Anti-frontman, good, who writes the lyrics of the hip hop band Social Waste, and it is one of the things we're going to talk about. But really, the opportunity, and again, thank you, Leonidas, for taking the time and agreeing to do this. We've had events with academics, we've had events with artists in the past, but really it's very rarely that we get the chance to talk to someone who is doing both, and in a very activist way as well, in the sense of being very engaged with what he does. But really the opportunity for me was to think about and to make this more public is the anniversary, the grim anniversary of 10 years since the assassination of hip-hop artist Pavlos Fyssas in Keratsini on September 18th, if I remember right, 2013. So we had planned this with Leonidas to be around that date. He's traveling, he's between Amsterdam and Athens, he tells me at the moment, so that took us a few days. But really today is also October 12th, the day of liberation of Athens from Nazi occupation in 1944. So when we talk about a hip-hop artist who was assassinated, mainly or mostly, Leonidas will tell us more about it, who was assassinated primarily or mostly because of his music and presence overall in the region, in the district of Keratsini and Piraeus. I think it's also relevant that on this day we should remember the liberation of Athens from Nazi rule in Nazi occupation in 1944. So Leonidas, thanks very much. And could you tell us, first of all, since we are doing this on the anniversary, let's say, of commemorating the assassination of Pavlos Fyssas, how do you remember Pavlos? You met him, you knew him quite well, you told me, right?
Yes, I happened to be, since I was involved in the Greek hip-hop scene since the late 90s, as an artist, let's say, as a member of a band since 1999. And Pavlos was also a member of a band, and we used to be in the same, let's say, collective, in the same hip-hop collective, which was called at the time Freestyle Productions. And it was a hip-hop collective that gathered around mostly the most famous at the time political hip-hop band of the country, active member. And there was a bunch of young fans in the beginning, fans of the band, who were also trying to do songs. And we would collaborate with each other. Sometimes we had each of us and his friends, her friends, we had our own bands. We would meet and exchange information because we didn't know how to do this thing, you know, how to do how to produce the music, how to write the lyrics, how to set live gigs, etc. And Pavlos was also a member of another hip-hop band at the time, which was called Kakamandata. Bad news, we would translate it. And I remember him because we were friends. We used to go and watch football games together. We would go to concerts together. We would go to protests together. And we happened to like to support the same football team, and that brought us together many times. No, we were friends. And until 2007, I think it was 2007, I was living in Athens. I was studying in Athens, and then I stayed for some time, and we would perform together as well in his different bands, because he changed bands and he changed the nicknames over the time. So then, like how many years later? 6 years later, I think, he was assassinated by the neo-Nazi party of Golden Dawn. And it's something that the hip-hop scene of Greece is carrying with it, no? Because Pavlos was one of us. Not only for the politically conscious kind of people from the country, but also for the hip hoppers, which is also a reason why hip hop as a scene, and it's a very big scene right now in Greece. We have concerts of 25,000 people lately. The neo-Nazi ideology is kind of the enemy, which is a good thing. So I don't know, what would you like to know about Pavlos?
Well, I think it's important to say for those who will be watching this that his assassination by Golden Dawn what happened came at a time when there is this surge of these far-right neo-Nazi groups in Athens, but also elsewhere in the country, which culminated to the party getting elected in parliament in 2012. So this comes at a very grim, very dark time, I think, in Greek society, especially in areas that were impoverished and marginalized, so to speak, or they experienced this surge of neo-fascism and this sort of very violent outbreaks against immigrants, against hip-hop artists who, had the courage to speak out against them. So I wonder what you could say, because you probably know the area as well. Was it really one of the reasons you think they assassinated him because of his lyrics or because of his presence more broadly in this particular region of Keratsini, or was it both?
I've thought about it. I've thought about it a lot, to be honest, because at the time, Pavlos was not particularly well known. I remember that when we started doing this music, these songs, he had also an issue. He couldn't catch the rhythm, the tempo. So we were trying together to see how to do it, and I was trying to teach him. I was better at that, and he wasn't. Later, he improved massively, and he changed bands. He then did a solo career, but he wasn't at the time. He was not well known in Greece, so I don't think that he was the famous rapper who was ideologically promoting anti-fascism, and that was strategically an enemy of Golden Dawn. No, I don't think that was the case. However, in his neighborhood, he was well known. He was not well known nationwide, but in his neighborhood, he was well known because of his character. He was a very jolly character. He was a funny guy, a nice guy to have around. And he knew everybody. He was friendly with everybody, and he was deeply against neo-Nazi ideologies. Also, he was a strong guy. So he used to work in the shipyards in Perama, which is the port side of in Piraeus, where the shipyards are. So it requires physical strength to do that, and he was very, very strong. I remember we were going to protest together, actually, and whenever we'd be in the front line, and I would tell him, "Okay, Pablo, let's go back," and he would say, "Don't worry, if anything happens, leave it on me." And he was the guy that you would trust, you know, and he was a really nice guy. We always say that when somebody dies, no, he was assassinated, he didn't die, but he really was a nice guy. So I think his presence in his neighborhood, because they also, Golden Dawn, for some reason, managed to infiltrate neighborhoods that, working class neighborhoods that in the past used to be left-wing, no? It used to be communist, actually. And they managed to turn that around and dominate ideologically in these neighborhoods. And Pavlos was extremely against that. So in his neighborhood, he was an important person. And at the time, it was also, I remember they were polling something like 13 to 15%. It was like the highest moment of popularity for Golden Dawn. So strategically, it was also the moment that signaled their downturn that led to most of the MPs being in prison right now. So I think it was his presence in the neighborhood mostly. Not so much his lyrics, not so much his popularity, but his presence in the neighborhood. That's my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, I see that. I agree. And I also think it's important to note that a week or so before his assassination, there were some Communist Party trade unionists who were targeted and were beaten extremely badly and sent to hospital.
One of them was the other member of his first band of Kakamandata, actually, Petros Poudidis.
So
Also,
clearly there were people who were targeted by Golden Dawn in that region. And as of course it transpired in the trial, there was this very quick mobilization of Golden Dawn members from the whole district of Nikia and elsewhere, to including, then there was also the other incident case of the severe beating of, I think, Egyptian fishermen a few months or a few weeks before. So the Golden Dawn was tried, I think, for all three cases, in fact.
And the assassination of Lukman.
And the assassination of Sakis Lukman, yeah. Now, 10 years on, what, if anything, has changed? You see, I mean, as a sort of social, analyst and a social scientist, but also as a hip hop artist, I mean, in these districts, in the sort of, as Greece has moved on, as Greeks have moved on, from that dark times. I mean, has anything changed? I mean, would you say, with the danger of oversimplifying, is there sort of a normalization of this sort of neo-Nazi, neo-fascism presence in politics? I mean, the number 2 of Golden Dawn, Kassidiaris, he got elected in the municipal elections last Sunday with 8-9%. So, which is, more or less the percentage of Golden Dawn in this district. So, how have things changed?
I wish I could say that things have changed, but that's not what I believe. A day or on the same day after the trial Golden Dawn was condemned, there was a radio producer that called me and asked for my opinion. And everybody was celebrating, and I was not. And I told them, and that was my opinion at the time, and this is my opinion now as well, that, okay, it's a positive thing that the institutions actually sent them to jail and condemned them, but I don't think that the presence of Golden Dawn and neo-Nazism and fascism and nationalism is restricted in the institutions. I think the problem is deeper. They have infiltrated the Greek society. You can also see that in the protests, I would say even pogroms against migrants over the years. I think a share of the population accepts, at least, or does not oppose these views. And the matter that Golden Dawn is not there as a political party doesn't say much to me, because the problem, to remember Gramsci, is the ideological hegemony. And if we want to beat Golden Dawn, we have to beat that. We have to beat their ideology, not their political parties. We have a political party, nationalist political party, which is not Golden Dawn, but they are in relation with Kasidiaris. They show it openly, who are called Spartiates. We have Kasidiaris, who got 8% in the municipal elections in Athens. We have members of this government, actually, they are ministers who had been involved with neo-Nazi organizations or nationalist organizations, or pro Junta of the Colonels organizations in the past. We have Voridis, we have Adonis Georgiadis, we have Plevris. So, and there is a share of the population that would support these views. That's the problem, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I think the problem is social, is not so much institutional.
And how
we
have
been honest
you?
About it.
Yes, thanks. I wonder how does your music come into this? You know, you have your lyrics, and for everyone who should listen to the lyrics. I mean, they have many. What are the references? Let's say when you start sort of writing a song.
When we start writing a song, I don't know. It depends on the song, and I can't really rationalize that. You know, sometimes people ask me, "How do you write a song?" And I cannot really explain. There is a process that is not systematic, rational, and explainable. Depends on the issues, but as a band, our references are the references of the Greek and the global left widely, let's say, put, no? So we have, we also play a game with a kind of game with our lyrics. So we actually refer to names or struggles or books from literature or poems or I don't know what else comes to our mind. And then normally our listeners go and look them up. And when they look them up, and that helps them understand the song better. We don't explain it to them. They have to do it themselves. No, it's like a task at university or something. And when they understand the song better, and they have made the effort to do that, they appreciate it more and they feel more connected to the song. No, because it's a song that I made an effort to understand, and that brings them closer to the artist. They have a kind of connection with the artist. And it works. And for example, we've seen young people, like, I don't know, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, going to look for Chronis Misios' books because they heard it in a song, which is, I think, it makes us content, at least, with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is one of the things I was thinking when listening to the song, that there's a sort of a global and a local dimension at the same time. I mean, there's also, I mean, something that you mentioned earlier too, and the example now of the 13 to 14-year-olds. I mean, it's getting, hip hop is getting very popular in Greece. How do you explain that? Since when you started, let's say in the late 90s or early 2000s to the present?
I'll try to, just for our audience to understand how big it has become. In 1999, 2000, when the first Greek hip-hop bands started appearing, the biggest crowd you could get in a hip-hop concert was probably 1,000 people. maybe 2,000, if that was a big concert of a big band. But that was the maximum. You couldn't get more than that because there was no more audience actually at the time. It was a foreign kind of sound, no? This rhythmic kind of singing that was coming from the US, but it was done in Greek language, was sounding even funny in the beginning. And that was the maximum you could get. Nowadays, last year, actually this summer that is just over, I can name more than 15 concerts of different artists that generated more than 10,000 people, 10 to 25,000. There were concerts of 25,000 people, which for us is unbelievable. Even we had 6,000, and I have performed in front of 30 people all over the years, no? And now I have performed in front of 6,000 and also in front of 30,000. And I can't really, I'm trying to explain it. I think it's the power of the lyrics. I think that it's also the fact that the other genres of music, of song in Greece are not particularly active. Like the political song in Greece didn't used to be hip hop. It was, Hatzidakis, Theodorakis, it was Mikroutsikos, who most of whom have died now. Most of the big poets also have died, or the important people who were writing lyrics. So there is a gap there. And I also believe that the audience that listens to hip hop has become bigger because more generations have been accustomed to this song and to this sound. So my generation, the generation of the people who were born in the early 80s, who were teenagers in the 90s, we are the first generation that started listening to hip hop and going to hip hop concerts. Now we have many more, and I don't know. I can't give any other explanation. I think it has puzzled me as well. If you have a better one, please.
I don't know. It's just, I think, a slight, a very interesting phenomenon, slightly puzzling. But you also have this, which I'm not sure all hip hop artists and bands have. You have this dimension of social activism, let's say, or musical activism, if you want to call it, supporting some social movements as a hip hop artist, as well as observing and, let's say, studying them as a social scientist. Could you give us an example or two of which social movements and how did you get involved in them?
We have supported, like we have performed, because we do kind of support these initiatives or these movements through various actions. One can be, mentioning them in our songs. Another can be performing for them so that they can generate some money in order to proceed with whatever they need to do. No, so we have played for self-organized football teams all over the country. We have played for big protest events all over the country. We have played for the movement or the communities against the gold mining extraction in Chalkidiki over the years. We have played for Viome, which is a factory, we call it a recuperated factory, which draws from the Argentinian recuperated factories of the early 2000s. No, it's the only one in Greece, and we're actually going to perform there in 2 days' time. And whenever there is a cause that we feel close to and that we need to support, we go and do it. And it's a two-way kind of relationship, because we kind of offer inspiration and we also get inspiration, and we also sometimes participate as persons, no, not as a band, actively in some of these causes. In my case, sometimes I also go and do research in some of these places. There was also a kind of effort to bring together, because I do mostly research in Latin America. So sometimes I work as a I function, not work. I function as a mediator between social movements in different continents. For example, Oscar Oliveira, who is a Bolivian, very important activist, he participated in the water war in 2000 in Cochabamba. He came into touch with the water movement in Greece because I happened to be there at some point. And he also came to Greece, and he has stayed, he has visited Viome, he has relationships with Greece now. So I think this is a function we perform as a band as well.
You mentioned Latin America, and I must say it's really interesting to hear from you about the experience of studying a social movement or participating also in a social movement. I mean, Leonidas, you've written a really wonderful book about the two sort of comparison between two movements, right? The one in Chiapas and one in Bolivia. Could you tell us first about this? How did you get involved in going into Mexico, Chiapas, and Bolivia later on?
Yes, to be honest, the reason was not academic. It became academic later on. So I've been following the Zapatista movement ever since the late 90s, actually. I didn't speak Spanish at the time. I learned Spanish in the mountain from the Zapatistas. They have a small school that I attended. They also teach indigenous languages of the area, Tzotzil, Cheltal, Tojolabal, Tzotzil mostly. But at the time, through translations of the communiques that the Zapatistas were publishing that were making it to Greece, I was following the movement. And then that led me to, after many years, that led me to do a PhD on the Zapatistas and the Cocaleros of Bolivia, who later on who formed the political party, the party of Evo Morales, and that brought me to both countries and to both regions, because they are small regions within bigger or smaller countries. And I spent I don't know, 6-7 years coming and going, and my preferred I would say method of doing research is ethnography, is being there, living with the people that you want to learn from. And that brought me to both Bolivia and Mexico. People ask me, when did you finish your research? I normally say, you never finish your research, especially when you have this kind of relationship and when things keep happening, no? So I keep following what's going on in both countries. Then I started getting involved with the Amazonian communities as well, and in the past 3 years I've been conducting research in a small Amazonian community in Ecuador, which is called Sarayaku, which has also faced some issues with extractivism of oil in that case. And I keep coming and going, and that's what I'm going to do now as well. I'm going back to Ecuador.
Now, the Zapatistas movement, let's say, or broadly speaking, intervention, it was quite, it came with a blast, probably, right? That was 94, 93, 94. I remember.
1st of January 1994.
January 1st, 1994. And a few years later, I was studying and we were with friends in Corfu. And I don't remember who organized this, but there were two activists who had just been to Chiapas, and they came and talked to us about it. And I thought, okay, this is really interesting and very, very new. But then, of course, what I mean by that is that it almost anticipated some of the environmental activism that is now sort of main currency, some of the, indigeneity discussions and issues, and the sort of more, politicized versions of this, or more political versions of this. How has this changed, you think, over time? I mean, are they now in a sort of balance, let's say, arrangement between their autonomous regions and the Mexican state? Or what are the challenges, let's say, now?
I think that it's been many years. It's been 30 years now. Actually, in 2 months' time, they are going to celebrate 30 years of that 1st of January 1994. And they have gone through many and different stages in the evolution of the movement. No? And imagine that because I keep going to these places, and I do have relations with these people. But imagine that I meet now 10, 12-year-old kids whose parents are actually the sons and daughters of the actual people who did the uprising in 1994. So we're talking about third generation, fourth generations now. And these kids don't even have a living memory of this thing. They were not there. They were not existing at the time. So, and one of the challenges that the movement now has is to pass the memory, to help, to try actually to get these kids realize what has been done over these years. And sometimes, like teenagers, they ignore them. They prefer to go on the internet to play football, basketball, whatever. And it's kind of funny to watch this process as well. At the same time, they are not at war with the Mexican government anymore. They are solidified in the autonomous regions, which is a different process of creating, prefigurating actually new modes, new ways, new institutions of running this thing. And in terms of politics, economy, social relations, justice, all these institutions, they prefigurate new institutions, and that's what they are involved with now. I think also that the Mexican state at the same time learned its lesson, so they stopped repressing them because they realized that there was a huge negative impact on popular opinion against the Mexican state. So I think that the Mexican state's stance right now is to try to leave them alone, to silence them as much as possible, and not to mess with them too much, because that would create actually popularity for the Zapatistas. And I think we are at this stage now, which is it's not a revolution anymore. It's not an uprising anymore. It is a revolution with a small r, I would say, not a big R revolution. But it's an equally interesting process.
You probably, I'm sure, rather, you've thought about this a lot, and you've probably been asked about this a few times. How long did it take you to become, let's say, to be accepted by the people you go to meet, and to, let's say, not to study, because that's not the right word, to engage with their politics and their lives in order to to construct a narrative, let's say, or an argument for, let's say, for a more broader, or for a broader audience, or for a more specific academic audience? Like,
it's a good question. It depends, actually. It depends a lot on the political environment that you're trying to enter. In the Zapatista communities, for example, it was extremely difficult. And it was extremely difficult because the movement itself controls very much who and what kind of information gets in and out of the communities. There's also a huge number of academics, journalists, artists, NGOs, you name it, that want to get involved with the communities due to the popularity of the Zapatista movement. And the Zapatista movement is closed to everyone. Because of that fact, it is also an over-researched kind of area. For me, it was extremely difficult to establish relations with these people. It took me more than 2 years of being there and trying, you know. In other cases, in Ecuador, for example, the people were more open. It was not such an over-researched place. They also wanted to establish this relationship with academics or journalists from abroad because they may be useful to them at times. And it wasn't too difficult. In Greece, where I have also conducted research, because I have this profile, it is easier for me to be accepted by certain political communities, but it's also, on the other hand, it also makes it impossible to enter other political communities, which is something that, for example, in Chalkidiki, I would have liked to conduct research on the miners. But I don't have access to that because of my profile. So you get something, you lose something.
You were telling me the other day that during COVID you got stuck, you got stranded at Ecuador, right? For how long? For a few months?
For 5-6 months. I know Quito better than my home city now.
And what was that like? I mean, were you able to, you know, I guess you got to know people a lot more. You got closer to a few people.
Actually, yes, that's what happened. I happened to be in a community which is 4 hours by canoe from the closest city, and there was no road to get there. The only way to get in and out is the river. And on top of that, the day before the borders closed, the day before Ecuador closed its borders, the biggest flood in the living memory of the community took place, which means that the house, the hut where I was living was flooded by 4 meters of water. So I had to run away together with the rest of the community to the closest hill to save our lives. And when the water subsided, and when because there's no internet there is like satellite internet that they use a generator to function, and you normally have access to 2 hours a day. But because of the flood, we didn't have access. So I found out that the borders were closed 2 days later. When I managed to get access. And then there was the problem of how to get out of the community, to go to Quito and probably look for a humanitarian flight, because there was only humanitarian flights that were taking place at the time. But that adventure, let's say, brought me closer to the actual people of the community. And because it's, you know, we had to run for our lives together. And it was a tough moment for them, a very difficult moment for them. And they kind of appreciated the fact that I was with them, I stayed with them, I tried to do whatever I could. I wasn't particularly useful because it was in the jungle, and the people who live in the jungle tell you what to do in the jungle. It's not me who's going to tell them. But for example, now that I'm going back there, and I asked for access, the answer was, you have open access. No question about it.
So it was this disaster, let's say, that kind of allowed you to get closer to people in the community. And do you remember what was the first reaction when you sort of turned up there and you said, I'm Greek and I've been here, I would like to get to know you?
Yes, the first question was whether Greece is close to Dubai for some reason. They were not particularly surprised because of Greece. They wanted me to present my case. I went to an assembly, an open assembly of the community. I presented my case, so I asked them whether they would accept me in their community for a while. They were positive, and then we started building a relationship. But I remember the reaction of Filemon Escobar in Bolivia, who was the kind of mentor of Evo Morales. Filemon Escobar is a legend. He's dead now. He was a legendary figure for the Bolivian left. He was a Trotskyist, and he was kind of Manolis Glezos of Bolivia. And I was looking for him for a long time. And when I finally found him, and I told him, look, I'm a researcher, I'm Greek, and and he said, Greek? In half an hour in my place. Because he had this fascination with Greece, and they were also calling him, his nom de guerre was Filippo. And that sometimes, or in the Zapatista communities, because at the time Greece was going through a wave of popular protests against the Troika, etc., etc. And for some reason we had I don't know, an image of radical activism as a country. And when I was asking for some access at some point, the answer was, because you are Greek, it may be easier. If you were German, it's a different story. So sometimes it helps.
I guess it was Greece's global moment of radicalism, or at least perceived as such. Now,
Yes,
I've got a final question. I've got many more, but I'd like to ask you just one more before I invite our colleagues to ask any questions, perhaps. When you were translating the book, when you had the book translated, in Greek, I mean, what is it like? What is really beyond, the obvious that you'd like people in your own, in your country, in the language, in the mother tongue, let's say, to read your work. What is it that you think Greek readership, Greek audiences can get from the book? What is that they're going to learn? Let's say, because Greece tends to be a fairly narrow, I think, country in terms of scope. It's everything is Greek centered, or most things are Greek centered. So, what do you expect people to to think or take from the book?
It's true. We are, as an academic kind of scene, we are Hellenocentric or Eurocentric maximum. Maybe we're interested in our neighbors in the Balkans or Turkey, and that's all, basically. So even in the departments where I have worked in Greece, I've been considered kind of a UFO, an alien. Like, what are you talking about? No, we have no idea about these places. What are you talking about? But at the same time, there is a lot of interest, especially when it comes to Latin America, because there is a special kind of relationship between the Greek audience, at least the left wing, and what's going on in Latin America, not now, but ever since the Cuban Revolution, I would say, we have also had people who went as volunteers to Nicaragua, for example, after 79, after the revolution there, to work with the Sandinistas. We've always had this fascination with what's going on in Latin America. So in a way, this book, also kind of helped people understand what's going on in countries that they know about, or movements that they know about, like the Zapatistas in Mexico, but also in countries that they have no idea about and they had never heard like Bolivia. They knew Evo Morales. They heard of Evo Morales. They had this image of, the indigenous who became a president in Bolivia, but that's all they knew. And I think it served, the book served its purpose at the end of the day, even though ever since I finished my PhD, a lot of things happened in Bolivia as well. A coup d'etat, for example, Evo Morales had to step down from presidency, etc., etc. But from what I see, and also another important thing that I didn't expect and I didn't know at the time, was that it kind of encouraged people, students, PhD students, researchers, postdocs, to look beyond this Hellenocentrism or this Eurocentrism that they were used to, that, it can be done, it's possible. If somebody did it, we can also do it. And I do get research proposals from PhD students now that want to work on Argentina, on Chile now, or Mexico. If I can put them in touch with somebody, they ask me how to proceed, etc., etc. So this was not intended, but it happened in the process as well. I didn't even think about it.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's a very apt way to reconnect with sort of early literature now, back in the 70s, 80s, of Greek social scientists, political sociologists, who looked to Latin America, but they had a very particular take, right? They wanted to explain, let's say, the Greek dictatorship by looking at dictatorships in Latin America, or they were finding connections. Yeah. Muzelis and others who, wrote about this. And I guess the anti-Eurocentric, or the skepticism towards Eurocentrism, is also depicted in the image and the photo you sent me, with the map of South America behind you, upside down.
Yeah, that was inspired by Galeano, Eduardo Galeano,
who you also talk about in a couple of songs, I think. Yeah. Now, thank you, Leonidas. Any questions from the colleagues who are here?
Yeah, I have a question. First of all, thanks so much, Leonidas. I think you gave us a lot to think about. I'm still kind of thinking about some of the things that you and Saki were just discussing about internationalism and Eurocentrism. I did want to bring it back to the conversation about Greece's political culture today, though. I mean, we're 10 years on from Pavlos' assassination, and many of these problems still persist. I mean, fascism is still quite present in Greece's political culture. Political violence, anti-immigrant sentiment, these are still problems. The left overall seems quite pessimistic after the election of Gasilaki in particular, and the elections of the summer. Since you mentioned Gramsci, I thought it might be useful to kind of bring the conversation back there and think about ideological hegemony and what like a war of position could look like in your view. Like, how do you undermine, delegitimize some of these hateful ideas within civil society? And I also want to ask you in particular about whether or not you're seeing any hope from some of the solidarity initiatives that you've worked with and written about in the past.
Thank you, Vasily, for the question. I don't know. I think right now we're living through because also protest waves come in circles. What in social movement studies we call protest cycles. No, so sometimes we have big number and big intensity of protest waves, and at other times we don't. And we try to explain why and how and why that happens and everything, but this is the standard, no? That we don't always have high political participation. So in terms of what you asked about Gramsci, I'd like to bring an example from 2015, when we had huge waves of immigrants and refugees who were trying to pass through the country and through the Balkan corridor, then move to wherever they wanted to go, mostly Germany or Northern Europe. At the time, the hegemony, the ideological hegemony, was pro-refugee. Everybody I knew and people that I didn't know were trying to help in any way they could. They were trying to collect food, money. They were trying to bring their cars and help people pass. They were receiving them on the coast and everything, no? And on the media, that was also the image that we, grandmothers that are receiving the children of the refugees, and that reminded them of the catastrophe of Smyrna and the people who were coming from the other side of the Aegean, etc., etc. That was the image. And that made the life of these people a lot easier. There were no pogroms against them in Evros. There were no people on the news shouting that they should go home and that they are getting our jobs or whatever. So in a way, I believe that the key is there. And before, in a way, it's, I would say, a Weberian kind of stance, no? The idea comes first, and that helps us in performing the action, no? And I think that we lost that, and we have moved to the other side now. Now these people are the enemies. These people are not anymore our grandmothers who are coming from Smyrna, and we should help them. These people want to Islamize the country. That's the rhetoric. That's why I said that the old Antonio had a point there, and maybe we need that. We need to win that war again before we can talk about anything else. Now, how? I have absolutely no idea. From my side, I try to do what I know to do. I teach my students, I talk in wherever I'm invited, and I do songs. But that's all I can do. So I don't know how to do it, but I think I know what should be done.
Thank you, Leonida.
I have two questions.
Go ahead. Yes.
So one question is more, I guess is more your observation. I find that you kind of spoke of that briefly, but when I feel like there is a connection with Fyssas assassination and then Zak and then Ginoktonies, like I think there is after the Golden Dawn trial, And I find that there's a new, like, I don't know how to put it, but I was wondering, like, from your perspective, that you're more into social movements and that's your focus more. Like, if you feel that there is a new, not wave or not even a movement, I don't know if this is the right word, but like, I find that young people through particular like social platforms, and some anti-media groups like Omnia and, you know, individual journalists, and that there's a new approach, like it's a new, there's something has started. Like, I feel like now people they want to get into the courts more, like people, they want to like reach to the bone. I feel like with Fyssas and his mom as a very like important central figure, you know, for womanhood, for motherhood, for justice, for everything, I think she becomes like a very central figure to start, you know, and later on, the way she speaks to Garifalha's mom, to Zak's mom, like the solidarity that runs along mothers and women and, you know, victims and families. And I feel like through these people, like there is like the hope starts again. You feel like, oh, you can see, like now we can get more easily we can find more information about what's happening in the court, even like living, you know, across, like in a different continent. I could see what was happening step by step with Zak's trial. I could see what was happening step by step with Golden Dawn's trial. And like, I feel this is a new thing. It's a new page. Like, before that, I find that there was a lot of misinformation, A, absence of information, maybe B, and also I felt like that there was not, people didn't know where to look, maybe, or like didn't know that they have this power too, like to go and I experienced that with Skouries too, like how people, and actually it's one of my chapters, you know, the whole court trials, that it makes something like you relive the reality. People have to re-narrate their past. People become heroes and become victims just by the outcome of one court. So do you think maybe if we try to not maybe speak through social movement as a very you know, maybe if we speak with social movement terminology, but in a broader with a broader maybe I don't know, notion of that, is there something that is formed out of it? Is there like a new group of people that they're, you know, when something happens, then there is the power to reach it closer, to have a saying, to like, have you seen that from Fyssas and on, maybe from Alexis, I would say, but I think with Fyssas' mom, and I'm saying the mom because I feel because she was very outspoken, she didn't have any fear against Golden Dawn, which is amazing, because I don't know, people, for people that they were not at the time in Greece, I don't think they can experience that, but there was a lot of fear. Like I knew people in the left world that they wanted to speak, they wanted to write, but they were afraid in a great extent, or to go out, or, you know, to speak very openly about all those things. So I feel like with Fyssas, and then you have many, like Magos, like many, then you have, you know, the parents, you have the, like, there's a new kind of approach into, you know, something has happened and we can all get in. We can all be back behind that. So I feel it's something new. It's kind of changing. Something is changing there, but I couldn't pin it down. And I was thinking that you, through your songs, or, you know, through your focus on social movementality if you feel like it's something there and it's a new formation?
I think, thank you for the question, Faye. I think that it is a new phenomenon, especially when it comes to following the court processes. Here you have platforms that are dedicated to that, following live what's going on. They are broadcasting kind of live what's going on in the court cases, in these famous court cases. We also have, which is another new phenomenon, I believe, some groups of some generations, I would say, of young lawyers who become activist lawyers. And they also engage in these processes, and they basically take charge of the representation of the victims in court, many times without any remuneration for it, without being paid for it, for free, because they are politically active, which is also a new phenomenon that I didn't know, I had not experienced before. And also there is this symbolic kind of function of the parents of the victims, who are also outspoken. They appear in the news, they appear in different platforms, they appear in political events, and they tell their story. They talk about the cases that they represent. At the same time, though, I believe that it does not really reach all these phenomena, don't really reach a much wider audience, away from the political milieu that would anyway be interested and would be anyway engaged. And I'm also worried about it, to be honest, because the mainstream kind of news are dominated by the same politically and economically controlled media, and they impose the narrative. And I think that's a big problem there as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You had a second question.
I had another question, yeah, which is very close to what I'm doing. So it's kind of an internal conversation with me and Leonidas on that, but you're very welcome to join it. So we never had this with Leonidas, for the people that don't know, we kind of overlapped. When he was there, I was there, and we had like some brief conversations in Skouries, and we were together protesting at Thessaloniki's, what was that? For the exhibition.
Yeah.
Anyway, were discussing, but then I always wanted to, he's the perfect person to ask that, because when I was there, I don't know if you experienced that, but people keep telling me, oh, you came now, that's the end of everything, like nothing is happening now, why did you come now to do research here, like there's nothing. Mm-hmm. However, like as with the eyes of the researcher, for me was still there, things were still there, people cannot drive with a Hellas Gold jacket from Stratoni to Irsos. I mean, they can, but there will be something. There will be a conflict, there will be a talk, there will be... very recently, some journalists tried, when I was there, to go to Stratoni. They also, it's like there are still invisible borders. And I kind of talked to that in a conference we had in May, about how the whole friction has created borders that they are not visible per se, but there are different geospatialities. Mm-hmm. And the bodies become borders too. by wearing different shirts, and there are mobile messages still, like when I was there still, and I'm, even in the Caimero, they sell what they sell, they still talk about producing, selling, there's a lot of conversation around the attire that many people don't understand because they take for granted, but it's a thing. And so, yeah, my question is to you, it's a very simple one, and I think you have a lot to say about it, but from my point of view, this has never ended, and I think it's like it just has some pauses and some ups and downs, but it's like it's on a continuous mode going on, like it's a struggle as the people choose to present it. But in your eyes, how is this social movement going on? Like, is it the end of it? Has it died? Is it alive? How would you describe it?
I think I would agree with what you said. I think that for the people, the glorious days, let's say, for the anti-mining movement, let's say, the glorious days were in 2013, in 2014, in 2012, when there was a lot of protest, a lot of political engagement with the issue within their communities as well, before they also had their internal fights, their divisions, before they burned out as well because of all these years, the trials and everything. But I also believe that what you see today has its origins in what was happening in those times, and you can actually still see it, and then you trace back the story, and you also have the benefit of time. You may not be there while things are happening, but things are still happening, and what's going on now is a product of what happened before. And if you trace it back, and people talk about it and have thought about it and have seen actually what has happened in the process, I think it's useful from research kind of purposes. And also these places, I don't know whether you've been there, anyone in our audience has been there, but they are very politically contested places, especially some communities, which are divided, like Megali Panagia, for example, which is a village which is kind of 50-50 pro and against mining. There are places, there are shops, there are coffee places where you don't go if you are pro mining, if you are working for the company. And there are other places where you don't go if you are against, because you may be beaten up. We have a common friend who has been beaten up, seriously beaten up. So and outside of these places, of this region, I don't think that people know about it within the country and outside the country as well. So I think we also have this mission, let's say, with this duty to present what's going on in the day-to-day social relations, and how the extractivism of gold in this area affects the day-to-day lives of the people. We also have cases of cancer throughout 40-50 years in that region, that people take it for granted. Cancer is cancer. People always get cancer here. Women always get cancer here, and they don't even sometimes relate it to. I've had friends who are women who worked in the company where the chemical process was happening, and at some point she got cancer, and she said, yeah, people get cancer here. And I was like, don't you think it's related? And she didn't really relate it because it's normal, it's normalized. So I think I would agree with what you said, and that makes even more important the role that you know, journalists, researchers, people who can talk about it. We are actually now writing we are going to publish a graphic novel on Skouries, because to my eyes it was an interesting way to reach out to wider audiences. It's not really an academic book, but it's inspired by an academic research, let's say, and it's going to be out in December. And the main hero is a common friend of us, Sumu, who is one of the most interesting people we met there.
It's the Comandante of Skouries. Commandant. Yeah.
I
Thank
think
you
there
for
was there was a lot we talked about. I want to thank the colleagues who were present, first of all, but especially Leonidas, who is really, I mean, just the example of the graphic novel is proof that, you know, your ability to reach different audiences, different media, art forms, and ways of expression is really inspiring. So I want to thank you, first of all, for doing this. Leonidas Oikonomakis is the Sklodowska Curie Postdoctoral Fellow at the VU University in Amsterdam. He's also writing the songs and performing with the band Social Waste, which I would recommend everyone to listen to, and author of The Political Strategies and Social Movements in Latin America, the Zapatistas and Bolivian Cocaleros, that was translated in Greek in 2020. And I have just one thing to ask you: to consider coming to Toronto to perform with Social Waste.
We would love to try to arrange it. We would love to.
Leonida, thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you all for being here. It was nice to see you all.
Thank you, Leonida. Nice to see you.
All the best.
Γεια σας, παιδιά.
Thank you very much.
Γεια, Leonida.